Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about Netflix, but a very specific thing has happened with Netflix that I certainly didn't see coming and could pose a very interesting, if not risky future for the more traditional strand of television as we know it. Before we get into things, thank you for all your kind words in previous videos about me getting better. I'm still not 100%, but we are bouncing back. Please make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe as well. Your support really helps us out. Let's try and reach 75,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I'm not overly confident at the minute, but it'd be great if we could make that target. So what exactly is going on? Well, this article popped up on my feed from a place that we don't normally look at. This came from the Financial Times, and it says that Netflix has struck a landmark deal with France's TF1 to show traditional TV. Let's find out what's going on. Netflix has struck a landmark deal to show linear television for the first time with French TV network TF1, as traditional broadcasters struggle with changing viewing habits and fierce competition from streaming giants. Yes, you read that correctly. Netflix, the arbiter of the whole streaming era, the catalyst for the whole big shift and big push that began sort of 10-12 years ago, is going to be showing linear television, essentially trying to get inroads on that market too. It says TF1 will use Netflix's platform to broadcast shows such as, oh no, I can't speak French. You can see the programs here. Well, I know what The Voice is, obviously. It says it's also going to show major live sports in its home country. France's largest commercial broadcaster, which is TF1, will show all 5 of its linear channels on Netflix, as well as more than 30,000 hours of TV shows available on demand. Damn, so it sounds like TF1 and the whole TF brand, if you like, is basically going to be using Netflix as sort of its own BBC iPlayer, showing tens of thousands of hours of content on demand for French viewers and broadcasting some big shows as well. I never saw this coming. Could you imagine if this happened in the UK, if the BBC just suddenly turned around to Netflix and said, yeah, you know what, we'll make a deal with you. You can show all of our programs on your service and all our back catalogue as well. It's just mad. Let's carry on. It says the deal opens the door to more deals between Netflix and traditional TV groups, which are struggling with declining audiences and advertising revenues as more people watch TV online or over streaming services. This is no secret. We have talked about this ad nauseum here on the channel, that this is happening, that old traditional route of TV that was popular, particularly in the latter part of the 20th century and the first decade of the 21st century, it is falling apart. You know, these commercial broadcasters are bleeding money on the daily almost, and audiences are going down and down and down. And even though numbers can reflect, you know, changing habits, it still is looking bleak for the traditional model. So it seems TF1 is using this as maybe like a last chance saloon. I have no idea what the television market is like in France, full stop. If you are French yourself or you live in France, you might be able to shed some light for us in the comments. Even I can recognize this is a very big step, because if TF1 can do this with Netflix, especially if it goes well, then other broadcasters around the world may take notice as well. But I'll give more of my thoughts on that and the whole future of this idea later on. We're going to carry on with the article. Greg Peters, who is the co-chief executive of Netflix, told the Financial Times that some French audiences now thought of TV as Netflix, and so this is an opportunity for us to work with the largest broadcaster in the French media ecosystem and producer of great premium content. Peters said that the deal would bring different sorts of shows to Netflix, such as soap operas as well as live sports. TF1 shows the French national football team's matches as well as other sports, including basketball. And I mean, yeah, I guess in those areas, that is something that Netflix, and in fact, a lot of the streaming dedicated companies do lack, that focus on live sports. That's often reserved for, you know, a nation's broadcasters, public service broadcasters or big commercial broadcasters. Also, soap operas. You don't really see soaps operating on a streaming service, and now via Netflix, at least the French ones, are going to get the chance to do so. And it is interesting how he mentions that a lot of French audiences view TV as Netflix now. I would argue this is a sentiment that is felt around the world generally. I know people here in the UK who, you know, you say you want to watch some TV and they instantly will gravitate towards the streaming sites, your Netflixes, your Disney Plus, Paramount, all of that sort of stuff. That is where the audiences are going now. They are far less inclined to jump to the traditional channels of old. Carrying on, it says Netflix's co-chief declined to say whether or how subscription and advertising revenues would be shared between the two companies, or whether the streaming company had paid an upfront fee for TF1 content. That is a very good point, because how is the money going to be split on this? We know that Netflix runs a ad-supported tier. I believe it's their cheapest one on offer for customers. So how would that revenue be split with TF1? My guess, and again, this is purely a guess and speculation, my guess is that they would have paid this upfront fee for TF1 content, but I mean, you'd like to think it'd be a very substantial amount, because for TF1, they're essentially saying, hey, look, we're offering you a lot here. We're offering you our channels, our brand, our most popular shows. They're going to want some good money for that. So it wouldn't surprise me if it comes out that a big sum of money was paid for this. It says TF1 Group reaches 58 million monthly viewers throughout its broadcast channels and serves 35 million users on its TF1 Plus streaming service. Right, so it already has its own streaming service, although presumably this is locked to France. In 2022, Netflix co-chief Ted Sarandos said the streaming platform had surpassed 10 million subscribers in France. The deal, which will commence in summer 2026, will open up commercial opportunities for TF1, which is reliant on advertising income rather than subscription fees, even for its streaming service. Okay, so a few things there. Summer 2026, this isn't happening instantly. French audiences are going to have to wait a year for this to take place, and I guess a year for the results to yield. And also the fact that TF1, as it says, is more reliant on the advertising income rather than subscription fees. And a lot of the old guard, a lot of the older channels around Europe, around the world, are in the same boat. For example, here in the UK, ITV is reliant on its advertising revenues. Yes, it has different strands. You've got ITV Studios. There's several different avenues in where that money comes from, but advertising revenue for a long time made up the bulk of that. They do offer their own streaming service in ITVX, and yes, there is a subscription model where you pay, but that is in the, immense minority compared to the amount of money that just makes through straightforward advertising. It says TF1 Group Chief Executive Rudolf Belmer, I'm sorry if I got that wrong, said as viewing habits shift towards an on-demand consumption and audience fragmentation increases, this alliance will enable our premium content to reach unparalleled audiences and unlock new reach for advertisers. I still think this is a bit of a gamble, even though all parties involved seem very positive towards this. Those close to the deal said that TF1 was highly influential in the European broadcasting industry, which is expected to watch how the partnership works. Other traditional broadcasters have either sought to try to rival Netflix with their own subscription services, albeit without the same global scale, or distribute their content over YouTube or social media sites. And that whole thing about moving it over YouTube and social media, I totally get why they do that, because, the engagement possibilities are huge. But in terms of generating revenue, I'm not quite sure how lucrative that is for them in the long run, if that makes sense. Like ITV and the BBC, all the broadcasters here in the UK really putting stuff over on YouTube. They will make some money from ad revenue, surely, but I don't understand how that is a more financially successful alternative as opposed to, via streaming or via subscription. I'm not a businessman. Maybe it does make a lot of sense, but it always sort of baffled me a little bit. And interesting as well, it is true that other broadcasters have tried to rival Netflix with their own offerings, but they lack that global scale. As much as we can praise BBC iPlayer, or you might like ITVX or Channel 4's streaming offering, they are all practically bound and serve UK audiences. And whilst there is a great population in the UK, it is obviously not on the same scale as having access all over the world to billions of people in the same way that Netflix does. Peter said that given this was the first time Netflix had done such a deal, the group would first see how the partnership worked before exploring further tie-ups with other broadcasters. Netflix has in the past licensed content from broadcasters like TF1, but many such groups have been reluctant to share their biggest shows. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You've seen that here. If you have Netflix here in the UK, you'll have seen programs that were big on the BBC, ITV and Channel 4, and they might be on Netflix for a short amount of time, and then they get taken away as that deal expires. Some big shows never make their way to these streaming services because the original broadcasters want to hang on to them. They're just too lucrative to give away. So TF1 making this big move, it will be all eyes on it in summer 2026, even for the non-French, because as the article quite rightly points out, there will be a lot of European broadcasters watching very closely to see how this goes. Belmer said he did not expect the move to cannibalize TF1's existing audience, describing it as highly positive for us. linear TV is in secular decline. We have tried to compensate for that decline, or limit it, by launching our own free-to-view streaming platform, but also trying to tie up and benefit from the huge driving force of Netflix. And again, it is very refreshing to see someone who works within a broadcaster to not try and tiptoe around the subject, to just announce it head on, that yes, linear TV is in some form of decline, and we need to try and compensate for that, and we need to try and adapt to that. Launching your own free-to-view streaming platform, absolutely a step in the right direction, giving people that choice. It's just the same as BBC iPlayer here, ITVX, all of them. But moving to capitalize on Netflix's force, I'm still very skeptical whether this is going to pay the dividends they're hoping for. TF1 is responsible for scripted dramas, such as, the ones you can see that I can say, Erica. Soaps such as Demain Nous Partient. I'm so sorry. You can read them there because I don't speak French. I don't want to butcher it anymore. So that is the long and short of it. TF1, one of the biggest, if not the biggest broadcaster in France, is moving to a deal with Netflix. This isn't happening until summer 2026, so we've got a year to wait. And it will take a few months, I think, before we start seeing potential numbers come through and see whether this deal is indeed paying its dividends. Will audiences flock to Netflix to watch TF1? Will they pay for a subscription to Netflix? But I'm just trying to think as a viewer, right? I'm not sure how it works in France, if it's just a license fee you have to pay for your television, or once you buy your telly, that's it. But if you have a telly and you have access to TF1, and if you have access to their own, the TF1 free-to-view player, would you be inclined to pay even the minimum of, say, I don't know what it would be, 5-6 euros a month for Netflix with ads? Would you be inclined to do that? I get they're trying to utilize the audience that already have Netflix, but surely you want more people to sign up as a result and, in effect, to consume TF1 content. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll see come the dividends. But I want to talk about the future prospect of this. Best case scenario, if this goes really well in summer of next year, I do genuinely think other broadcasters around Europe to start with, maybe even ones here in the UK, may look at similar options. In terms of our broadcasters here, so the BBC, I don't think the BBC will go for it. I don't think the model they have is inclined to do that on the same scale as this deal. ITV, I'm also going to say may hold off because, they spent the last few years really trying to launch and push ITVX, so I think they'll want to see how many dividends that can pay first before they even contemplate something like this. Channel 4, I think, is in, I want to say they're in a similar boat, whereas Channel 5 is, still owned by, is it still owned by Paramount, or who took it over? I can't remember. But again, would they want to sign this when, I guess, Channel 5, if it is still owned by Paramount, that content would just go to Paramount Plus? Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I don't think UK broadcasters are going to be in a mega rush to get this, even if it goes well for TF1 over in France. But if it does do well, then this could be the start of a transition for traditional TV, where you may still have linear schedules, but it may just be operational via Netflix. We'll have to wait and see come summer 2026. However, the flip side, if this does not go well, if audiences do not flock to this, if they do not watch via Netflix, then, this only is another death knell, I think, for traditional TV. It won't kill it off just from this, but I think it's another step towards traditional TV being phased out in the long run, which is already seemingly going to happen. So my final thoughts on this is I genuinely don't know how this is going to go. Like I said, really good idea on paper, but we are just going to have to wait and see whether it works or not. But that is all for this video mainly. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did. It does help us out. And let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. Do you think this can really work? Do you think this can come to pass? And do you think it could even work for the UK broadcasters? Let me know all your thoughts on it in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. We'd love to have you aboard. And let's try and hit that goal of 75k before the end of the year. In the meantime, I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me. And I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Sean Knock, Dord Khan, Liam Domain, AJ Mac 200017, Deck, Jen, Traffy, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Evan Hart 42 Radio, Monanal Thurman, 40-something Manchild, John McLeod, James Wallace, Ben, Stephen Oliver, Shadowfiend 180X, Swan Ronson, Adam Gamer, Sir Fonzie Daz, Seraphic Euphoria, Real Random, Matthew Elliff, Pigeon's House, Shah H, Dave Batten, Real Team Foxy Plays, Leonard Starbuck, and Kevin Mallon, our AMTV staff members.